Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
Today we're doing a bonus episode review over Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. We'll start by talking a little bit about the author. Tracy Deonn is a New York Times and Coretta Scott King John Steptoe award-winning author of Legendborn and a second-generation fangirl. She grew up in central North Carolina, where she devoured fantasy books and Southern food in equal measure. Tracy's a contributor to the 40th anniversary Empire Strikes Back anthology, From a Certain Point of View, from Del Rey Star Wars books, in addition to being a featured expert in the 2019 Star Wars Fandom Sci-Fi Channel docuseries Looking for Leia. Tracy was also a co-writer and consulting producer. Her nonfiction essay about growing up black and geeky, Black Girl Becoming, was published in a 2018 anthology, Our Stories, Our Voices. Tracy is a champion for diversity and representation in science fiction and fantasy literature and media, and when Tracy's mother told her that the women in her family were black Bene Gesserits, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope I am. If I'm not, I'm so sorry. She believed her. Tracy successfully persuaded her master's committee at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, to allow her to write both her thesis paper and a fully produced, award-winning play about Superman, West African myths, and secret identities. After earning her bachelor's and master's degree in communication and performance studies from UNC, Tracy worked in live theater, video game production, and K-12 education. As an instructor, Tracy taught theater to middle and undergraduate students and creative and academic writing at the university level. When she's not writing, Tracy speaks on panels at science fiction and fantasy conventions, reads fan fiction, arranges puppy play dates, and keeps an eye out for ginger-flavored everything. I think I want to hang out with Tracy. She sounds pretty cool.
Yes, she sure does.
Yeah, definitely sounds like we would get along. Barbara, do you want to tell us a little bit about the book?
Yep. So this was originally published on September 15th of 2020. It is a YA fantasy and retellings. Depending on the copy you have, it is 501 pages, and it currently has a 4.4 out of 5 on Goodreads, 4.9 on Barnes & Nobles, a 4.7 on Amazon, and a 4.7 on Audible. And it has been nominated for the Locus Award for Best Young Adult in 2021, the Los Angeles Times Book Prize for Young Adult Literature in 2020, Goodreads Choice Award for Young Adult Fantasy and Sci-Fi in 2020, and the Lodestar Award in 2021. And it has won the following award: the Ignite Award for Best YA Novel in 2021, and the Coretta Scott King Book Awards John Steptoe Award for New Talent Author in 2021. We also think it's important for readers to know what, if any, representation is in the books we read. So for this book, the main character is a POC, and there are minor POC characters as well. There are main and minor LGBTQ plus characters, but no character with a disability.
Awesome. Thank you. Do you want to give us a brief synopsis of the book before we get started?
So this book is about, I believe she is 16 years old, and it starts off with the fact that she just learned that her mother died in a car accident, and she doesn't believe that it is a car accident. And then she gets accepted into this like special program for like high schoolers, like smart high schoolers at UNC. And so she goes with her friend, and then at night at this party that they shouldn't have been in, she sees some things that no one else seems to notice, like demons and stuff like that attacking other students. And she learns about this like secret society called Legendborns, and she tries to weasel her way into, with the help of Nick, another character that you meet, so that she can join this society, because she believes that they have a hand in her mother's death, because one of the people that she sees like defeat the demon is like a teenager, and he's like a mage, what they call a Merlin in the book series. And she remembers a Merlin being around, questioning her during her mother's death. It was one of the cops. And so she kind of was like, well, this kind of sounds suspicious. And so it's her attempting to break into this normally all-white society at this school that turns out to be, because of the retelling, it's like author's roundhouse. What is it called? The Knights of the Round House table, Knights of the Round Table, You're muted, so you can talk all you want. No one's going to hear you.
My bad. Yes, Knights of the Round Table.
Yes, Knights of the Round Table. Whatever. House Table, same thing. So it's kind of retelling, not it has those characters in it and that lore in it. So that's pretty much the book, besides obviously spoilers. But that is a little brief synopsis there.
Awesome. Thank you. Which we'll obviously get to the spoilers here in just a little bit. But before we do, what did you think about Legendborn? And remember, for this part, no spoilers.
Obviously, I could not put this book down. I loved it so much. I think it had a great balance between plot, character development, world building, action, all of the things that make my little heart love books. And I was actually the one who recommended this book to Michael, so I obviously really enjoyed the book.
It's true. I also really enjoyed this book. I went into it obviously because Barbara recommended it, and I think she recommended it like multiple times as she was reading it. She'd be in bed reading it and like, oh, hey, I think you really like this book. And then she'd tell me a little bit about it. And it's like, okay, well, after so many recommendations, I was like, oh, well, we should read this for a bonus review. And so here we are. But yeah, I really enjoyed the book. I thought that it was really well written. I really enjoyed the magic systems in the book and the character development as well as the world building that she did, even though it obviously takes place in a real place in our world. The groups and the secret societies and all that stuff that we learn about was very interesting. I also couldn't put it down for the most part. There were a couple lulls in the book, nothing crazy, like nothing where I was like, oh, I'm not going to finish this. But there were a couple parts where I thought it got a little slow, but that happens from time to time. And obviously Barbara didn't feel that way, so I'm sure that I may be the minority there. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So obviously we're not going to go into our individual ratings right now. You got to wait till the end for that. But our group score for Legendborn was an 8.5 out of 10. So as you can tell, Barbara and I really didn't like it. That's an incredibly low score. Just kidding. It's one of our highest rated books, I think, this season, right?
I have no idea. I don't.
Oh, fair enough.
I don't have our scores pulled up. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Would you recommend this book? I think I already know the answer to you, but I'm going to answer first. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's easy to recommend to even people that maybe you wouldn't necessarily always recommend a fantasy book to. I thought in a lot of ways, I feel like one of the things that keeps people away from fantasy is the fear of like the depth and all the different things they have to learn in the book, like thinking about like Wheel of Time or some of those more larger
those are
high fantasy series. Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
And this is modern fantasy, so
it's modern fantasy, and I think that I found it to be a very easy read, and I think that if you've got a friend or family member that's like, oh, not a huge fantasy person, I think that they might really like this book. Also, the whole tie into the Knights of the Round Table, I think that Knights of the Round Table is a relatively universally loved story, and so the retelling of that, I think, would also be a pretty compelling thing. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
Obviously, you know my answer because I already have recommended it to people. I really enjoy the book. I think a lot of people will too. I think it's a nice spin on the Arthurian legend, and the way she wrote that was very interesting. I think that's one of the parts I enjoyed the most, was finding out how she was going to spin the legend and the magic. So the world building was definitely part of my favorite. And then the magic too, because, you can't just have unlimited magic. Like there's stipulations and limitations. And I think she fleshed that out really well. So I definitely would recommend this book.
And we all know how much you appreciate a good magic system.
Well, yes, I do. But anyways, I digress. Yes, I would recommend this book.
Yeah. Okay, so for those of you leaving us at this point, don't forget to give us a rating if you like us. That's really important, especially on Apple Podcasts. It really helps our podcast visibility. So if you're able to, you don't mind, please do it for us. And also make sure you're following us on both Facebook and Instagram. In both places, our handle is @BadassLitPod. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got a book that you want us to read and talk about on this show, let us know. Send us a DM, send us an email, leave us a comment, whatever you want to do. Get in touch with us and let us know what you'd like us to read. Now, remember, the second part of this episode is going to be an in-depth look at Legendborn. So if you do want to read this book, if this opening has got you intrigued, then stop listening right now, because there's a lot of spoilers in this one, and come back when you are done.
Hi, this is Leah Stuhler, creator and host of YA Book Chat podcast. If you love reading young adult books and chatting about them with your friends, then head on over to my podcast and take a listen. Each episode, my guest and I chat about a different YA book. We start spoiler-free and then head into our spoiler section where we dive into the mysteries of each book. And we do it with laughs and fun along the way. You can listen to YA Book Chat on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcast. And now, back to the show.
Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. We'll open up like we always do and figure out who gets the Badass Character Award. Barbara, who is your nominee this time?
I feel like this is pretty easy. It's Bree. She's the main character. This is a first person point of view, yeah. And so you get mostly just her and her thoughts and feelings and all that jazz. And besides that, I still think she goes through a lot between her mother passing away, dealing with the secret society, a lot of racism and all that stuff. And she, I think, handles it with class and grace. And I enjoyed her character because it wasn't your stereotypical, I'm not like other girls, like trope that I'm so sick
Your
of
favorite
reading.
trope.
Or the boring one where like they're so void of a personality that, you know, she's got spunk, she has personality, she has her moments of sadness and she allows herself to feel that even when she tries bottling it up. And I just really enjoyed her as a character. And I feel like, once again, I'm digressing, but Bree would be my answer.
Barbara, you tend to digress when you really like the book, so it's okay. For me, like Barbara said, it's a pretty easy choice. Bree was the main character. She's our perspective character, and in every aspect of the word, she is a badass. But I do feel like I have to throw out there were a lot of badass characters in this book. You know, if this award was like, okay, we're signing the best supporting badass instead of the top badass character award, like there are a lot of characters that I think would be nominated. Like my number 2 would be Cell, for example, which we'll talk more about in a minute. But obviously it's Bree. For all the reasons Barbara said and more, she's the clear winner and a badass character for Legendborn. So before we get into our other questions, let's talk a little bit about the characters. And obviously, first, we're going to start with Bree. So
like I've mentioned, Bree is the main character because you get the whole book in her perspective, since it is, like I said, a first person point of view. She is, like I said, 16 years old. Her mother just passed away. She gets accepted in this program, which ironically her mother did not want her to participate in. And we find out why, but she still does. And she goes with her best friend. I believe Alice is her name. Mm-hmm. And at their first night there, they go to a party they're not supposed to. And she kind of gets sucked into the secret society. The story with Bree is, you know, she learns that she can use magic from her mom's side. We're in the spoilers. We're going to spoil stuff here, right?
This is the spoilers. Oh yeah. 100%.
No, I know this is a spoiler, but like for character driven. So she, you know, joins the society and she finds out that she too can see these things. And it's kind of weird because normally it's more of the Arthur blood and the knights, his 12 knights, it's passed down blood family. So it's, you know, your child, if all your children die or something like that, then it would go to like, if you had, you know, brothers and sisters and all that. And so she's kind of stumped as to like why she can do this. And then she learns that her mother comes from root crafters, which is a different form of magic. And then at the very end, well, I won't spoil it for this part. Well, because I think we're going to talk about that kind of a twist at the ending. But anyways, she gets sucked into the society. They're not very welcoming to people who are not white because, yes, you guessed it, it is all white people. So
it sounds like mostly white men until like just like the recent history, right?
Correct. So it was white men. They didn't want the women to have it, and I think they finally was like, this is kind of stupid because the power isn't passed, like they don't care. The power doesn't care. It's literally next in line. So it doesn't matter if you had a boy or a girl. It's whoever, you know, was next in line for you. So if you had a daughter and it was passed down to her, and I can't remember now off the top of my head how back then they would be like murder. The only way to do that is you murder them, I believe. I don't think there's any other way of passing your. So I don't want to think about that. But anyways, that I don't feel like I really haven't talked to her, but like it was really nice to read a character like Bree, because like I mentioned earlier, she was trying to bottle up the fact that her mother died, and she was having a really hard time dealing with it, and you could feel that through the pages and through the writing of she was struggling because she just didn't want to believe that her mom just passed away and just left her, and everyone in her family dies really early. So she was struggling dealing with that, even though she was trying to bottle it up. And like she's a very smart girl, you know, like she's in this gifted program, but then she like night one she already gets blasted with the racism from this crappy cop, you know. And it was just a nice to read. She was well written. I liked, like I said, that she wasn't that boring tropey, like she didn't have a personality type of back. And when I was reading YA, I mean I still read YA, but like when I was actually the right age,
when you were the intended audience,
the intended audience, like a lot of the female characters were written so bland, because like it's like they weren't allowed to have a personality because you know the guy wouldn't like that, or the whole like I'm like not like different like all the other girls because she didn't know she was pretty, but the main person that she loves or who's going to be her main love interest is like, oh, but you're so beautiful, and she never thought she was because she was so bland. It's like, oh, give me a break. So tired of reading crap like that. And she's not like that. She doesn't apologize for who she is. She doesn't change her personality for either of the dudes that she likes. Like she's unapologetically herself and her. And I love that. And I love that. And I love that. And I love that. And I want to see more of that. And I'm not even saying like, once again, she's not a strong character in the sense that she's wearing like the chainmail and the armor she's fighting, because she does do that, but keep in mind that she's super behind because everyone else in the book has like their whole life been practicing this, and it's not one of those montages that you also get in fantasy books where it's like, I've never picked up a dagger in my life or a sword, and here's 2 weeks of practicing, all of a sudden I'm amazing at it. Like that's not what it works. Like she sucks at fighting throughout the whole book, even if she gets a bit of like the techniques and she gets practice and all this stuff, but she uses her brain power to get through how to do this. And also like sometimes it was like, you know, a little bit of luck here and there thrown around, but it's just,
for sure,
you know, it's not like she just magically became great at sword fighting. Like that doesn't happen. Like she's learning, but that doesn't happen. So I like her because of that. It's not like she's just this tough girl who doesn't have any feelings. No, she has all the feelings, and it like finally like
I mean, she is a teenager. So all right, so next character, let's talk about Nick. Nick is believed to be the scion of Arthur, which means he is the descendant of the top dog of this organization that they have, or the secret society that they're a part of. But at the beginning of the book, Nick has given up, he's forgone his right to the throne, so to speak. Not really a throne, but you know, because they don't have a king, obviously, but Arthur was the king. So he's forgone his right for that. He said, no, I don't want anything to do with it. And then he meets Bree and finds out that Bree wants to learn more about what happened to her mom, and she thinks she can do that by infiltrating this society. And so that is what causes Nick to undo, I guess, his
to help her.
Like,
he's like, okay, fine. He's like, I wasn't part of this anymore, but I guess I will be. And he sponsors her so she can join, essentially, so she can be his knight.
His scion.
That's why he joins. No, it's not a scion.
That's not. No, it's not right. Yeah, you're right. It's knight.
He's the
scion. Right.
So yes, that's how he helps. And personality wise, like I would say Bree's kind of in the middle. Like she's bubbly, but also has her grumpy side. She's not like one or the other. And if you're gonna do tropes here, because we are, he is your standard golden retriever trope, right? That kind of a person. Like he's always bubbly, always very happy. Like he isn't the emo kid like Sal is. Like he's the opposite. Yeah, so that's kind of his personality.
I do think, though, with Nick, that's some of that is a little bit of a mask, like because we sometimes see that peel back a little bit and see some of the real emotions behind it.
That's his persona that he puts out.
That's correct. That's generally his persona.
And I do think it's more on display for people or when he's around people. But I do think, like, generally speaking, he is a very positive or upbeat person,
Yeah.
or at least tries to be for stuff that happened to him outside of his control. Than he leans more of, instead of being like the grumpy don't talk to me person,
Yeah.
he surrounds himself with friends, and that's his escapism, is like, if I am just happy, then everything's just okay type of person.
Nick is also the primary love interest of our main character, Bree, throughout the book. So moving on from Nick, let's talk about Sel. His full name is Selwyn Kane. Sel is Nick's Merlin. So just like King Arthur had Merlin in this society of the heirs of the Knights of the Round Table, there is also a Merlin. Sel is that character. He's been bonded to Nick since they were children. After Sel's mom passed away, Nick's parents, primarily Nick's dad, took him in. And while he and Nick have a little bit of a tempestuous relationship, there is a level of, I would say, a thin layer of friendship, but there's also the biggest thing connecting them is this brotherhood, in the sense that they're connected by this society. Sel would do anything to protect Nick, even though they might come to not come to blows, but come to verbal blows for sure. They sling barbs at each other constantly in that way. But at the end of the day, they are connected and effectively brothers. Do you have anything else you'd like to add about Sel?
Well, so just kind of circling back to earlier, you said like knights. I call them knights. They're squires because they're not knights yet because they haven't been called. So Bree was Nick's squire,
Right.
or you know, technically a page, and then you become the squire. Anyways, but also a Merlin isn't a person, it's a title. So everyone, or every sect, am I saying that like SECTS, a sect?
There's different sects.
Right,
There are
that's the what I'm
different
saying.
chapters, I think is what they call
Chapters,
it.
yeah, different chapters, and each chapter has a Merlin, essentially. So he is this.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought it was just Arthur that had a Merlin.
No, because his dad has a Merlin.
Right, but his dad was also the scion of Arthur.
Right, but doesn't the other group that's not in their school, like in, I don't know where they were, some other school, because not all of the squires or pages in little group or chapter, not all of them are in this one. Like, we only met like a few of them.
So I'm
pretty sure they had a Merlin, didn't they?
I don't think they had a Merlin. I think that there's different chapters, because in the story of Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, some people say there's like 50, some people say there's like over 300 knights. So it would make sense that it'd be multiple chapters with the multiple scions of all these different bloodlines. But I think that Sel is the only Merlin, because there was only one Merlin in the story of Knights of the Round Table. So I don't think that.
Well, sure, but there's not only one Merlin, because there's multiple Merlins. Like, his mom's a Merlin. That creepy dude for the dad is a Merlin. There's multiple Merlins.
Right, but the Merlins are the ones that are connected to the Arthur, the scion of Arthur.
Right, but so you're saying there's just one Merlin. There's not just one Merlin. There's one
There's one Merlin per generation.
Yes, there we go.
One Merlin per generation.
So anytime there
is
an Arthur person born, then there's a Merlin attached to them. But I think there are multiple Merlins, because they think it's the Merlins that branched off that turned into the Morgana evil society.
Yeah, that's true.
Merlin. So you can't, like, if that's the case, you're only going to have like one or two Merlins per generation, because it's not, you know. So that's what I'm saying. I feel like that's not right. There's one Merlin for every chapter of the Order. Suck it, Trebek.
There you go. I was wrong.
I just Googled it.
Google
King's mages are also Merlins. Merlins are, okay, see, told you. There is one Merlin for every chapter of the Order. I was right. Go. I knew it.
So there must be one Merlin associated with the top ranking scion of every order, then, probably. That's one of the things, and we're obviously going to talk about this a little more later, but I'm hoping that in future books we learn more about some of the other chapters, since this was...
I have a feeling we probably will. We
got little like breadcrumbs in this one, but not a whole lot.
I do think we're going to meet more. But anyway, so for Sel, yes, that's him. He's like, so we're going to do the tropey ones. If Nick was the Labrador Golden Retriever, Sel is the black cat. Like, he's in every YA, not every, but in some YA novels, if there's going to be a triangle love interest here and the main person is between two people, it's going to be your sunny disposition and then your emo kid. Cell is the emo kid, like very much so in his feelings. So
yep, and he's the third point in the love triangle that is Bree, Nick, and Selwyn. You know, tell us a little bit about Tor.
So Tor, I mean, that's her nickname. Her full name is Victoria, I believe.
I believe that's correct. Yes.
She is the third one down the list of. So there's Arthur, there's Lancelot, and then she's the third one. I'm trying to think.
That's why they call her Tor. Tor's the name of the knight. That's why they call her that.
I thought her name was Victoria, and they call her Tor.
I think her name is Victoria, but the reason they call her Tor is that's the family name of her knight that she's the descendant of.
It's Tor?
Because there is a Knight of the Round Table named Tor.
Well, but are you sure that's her?
I that would make the most sense, but I'm not 100% since I'm looking at an article about Knights of the Round Table, not about this book. But
well, let's see here. Third, Tristan. Nope, you're wrong.
Well, would have made more sense
Tristan.
to choose Tor.
Tristan is the third ranked, and the scion is Victoria Tor.
Okay,
so
there you
go. So she is kind of introduced as like, I wouldn't say kind of a mean girl, but towards Bree, just because she's like, oh, you don't belong here thing. Also, she is Sel's like ex-girlfriend, and she's, I think, a traditionalist, but it's kind of weird because like if that's the case, you couldn't even be partaking in this. But anyways, she kind of gives Bree a hard time. I wouldn't say it's like the mean girl trope necessarily, because she doesn't really like pick on Bree that like in that sense. It's just more she's just not happy that an outsider is coming in,
right?
And I mean, she's kind of a badass, but kind of a rude badass. I'm hoping she'll de-thaw a little bit, especially because her girlfriend currently is like the opposite of her. She's like very nice to Bree, and it's like one of the only welcoming members of the people of the other people. So and it's actually her squire, and I believe her name was Sarah. I think that's right. Also, I believe Sarah is one of the only ones who's not full white. I believe she is like half white and half Latina, I believe, as well, because she was explaining to Bree, right. Like that's kind of how they became friends too. The the joint in that regard. Since she's like, I know so many white people, right? And Bree's like, oh my god. So that was kind of a funny scene. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about Tor. I think the reason she's like that is just because of the sexism in the society, where she's not seen, or she thinks that she has to prove herself to play with the boys. Essentially, this is like a boys club, and even though they do allow the women to come in, like you can still see there's still that bit of hostility and animosity towards that, I think. And I think that's why, that she comes off that way, is I feel like she's trying to prove a point that she can, tumble just like any other guy or whatever. But
yeah, no, I think that's fair. Let's see. Next on the list is Alice. Alice is Bree's best friend. She is the one that she also gets into the program. She's a high school student as well that gets into this early learner program at the University of North Carolina. They are living in the dorms together. Alice is Taiwanese American, and she's not one of the secret society members, but she still plays a pretty big role in the book, because all the times that Bree is outside of the society, we get scenes with Bree and Alice and kind of see their friendship and its roller coaster of hills and valleys as Bree navigates their life in the secret societies. We'll talk about another one in a second. Yeah. And then her friendship with Alice and her dad and the people that are in her life, her normal life, we'll say. Yeah. And she definitely struggles juggling those two things. And that and Alice.
Like Alice could tell that she was hurting because of her mom's death, and she wasn't handling, I think, the best way. And Alice was trying to be like, hey, like you need to deal with this. And Bree was like shutting her out. And then they have a big fight. But then of course they come back together, and then she pulls her into the secret society at the end.
Which I thought was kind of cool that Alice got pulled into that world.
I do think in the second book, she's definitely going to play a bigger role.
Me too.
I think
now that she's part of both sides of Bree's life,
right? So I think she definitely will play a bigger role, especially because she's super, super smart, and I think I don't know, she was like helping them towards the end there to like kind of solve some issues that they were having. So I do, she plays a smaller role in this book, but I do think she will play a much larger role in the second one, especially because now Bree isn't hiding the second life that she was kind of living. And that was like one of the reasons they were getting in a fight, because she's like, hey, like, why are you coming back all covered in mud and look like you're about to die because you're bleeding all over the place? And she's like, oh, it's just a new club I joined. I was like, what the hell is going on with this club? And why are you, you know, lying
That
about
was
it?
definitely a point of contention, because Alice would be like, but I've known you so much for so long, like I know you're lying. And that was definitely something that aided their relationship a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
All right, and the last character we're going to talk about, at least at this stage, is William. William is the healer of their chapter. He is 12th ranked. The Knight of it's Gawain. Is that how you pronounce that name? We were just talking about this. Okay, it's probably not how it's pronounced, but
I have no idea. I mean, you would know better than I would since you're all British. So
I'm going to go with that, and I might be wrong, but anyway, that's who he is scion to. William comes up a lot because he is one of the only like ranking members of their chapter that is friendly to Bree right out of the gates. When all the others are kind of like, who is this girl? What is she doing here? I can't believe Nick picked her. Because there was a lot of that when Nick picked her to be his squire. There was like an uproar among this community about how all the other kids had trained their entire lives for this, and he picks some random girl nobody knows, and they were probably actually thinking racist thoughts too, since that's how this chapter is. But William's one of the other ones that's nice to her and stands up for her and helps her, and I really liked his character. He's also the main healer, so you see him a lot because these characters tend to get hurt in their training and in their actual missions that they go out and do. So I really enjoyed his character. I'm hoping that he plays a large role in the upcoming books too.
Well, and unfortunately, because he is the last rank, then they're always being called on. So he always has his powers because it's called upon ranking wise from lowest to highest, in the sense of 12 is the lowest, Arthur's 1, he's the highest, and it's done by threat levels of what they consider, although we don't know if it's actually the bad guys, but because I feel like they're lying about that. Anyways,
yeah.
So he unfortunately is always like, his line's always called because there's always going to be like some type of a small threat, and so they always from the Shadowborn. So he's essentially always called.
Yep. Which means he'll have a shorter life, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Do we actually talk about that? I didn't think we did.
We're actually about to talk about that. So that our first question for this one is: consider the magic of the Legendborn versus the magic of the Root Crafters. How are they similar and different? And in your opinion, is one better than the other?
Okay, so they're similar in the sense that they're based on like familial, like family. So you have to be part of that family to use the magic, and that regardless of what type of magic you're doing, it all comes with a price. So root crafters get their powers from their ancestors and through offerings that they make to said ancestors, right? So this form doesn't seem to affect their lifespans, whereas Legendborn magic is stronger than root magic and allows the person to have more like unique abilities and qualities based on the knight's bloodline that you're attached to. And they can also like conjure up like magical weapons and armors, I believe. But their magic comes with a higher price, and that price is essentially like their life. Because most of them don't live past their late 30s because of that. So the Legendborn call it Aether, and the Root Crafters call it Root. And so the Legendborns pull on their own essentially life force to use the Aether, and that shortens their lifespan because of that. So Nick's father is able to live longer because he never got called upon, whereas like William's line, they tend to live a lot shorter because they're always awakened, what they call. So like you have your powers, you can use a little bit of it before you're awakened, and then if your line gets called and you're awakened, then you are like way more powerful. You can use the full bloodline of your night, essentially, is how that works. And then that's where you get pulled as far as you don't live as long. It cuts your life. As far as which one's better, I feel like they both have like their pros and cons, so it just depends on like what you think is more important. I might say root magic. It is weaker, but you're not dying so young, and like if you actually want to have maybe a little bit more of a normal life, there's that. And it's I don't know, I feel like you can make an argument for both.
Yeah, I think that's true. When I was reading this and we figured out like what the real cost of the magic was, or the ether for the Legendborn, the first thing that came to mind was that they're effectively practicing blood magic.
Ooh, I wouldn't call it that, but fair enough.
I would, because they're using their own life force to create.
Yeah, but it's not like they cut themselves and like spill blood all over the place.
Blood magic isn't always cutting yourselves, but it's literally using your own life force to...
I don't think so. I think if you looked at the root term of blood magic, even though it's fake, like blood magic isn't a real thing.
It probably depends on the system that it's in and all that.
Blood.
Anyway, that's what I thought of when I thought of them. And that there's a heavy cost. It's not just their life. Hasn't been confirmed, but it's heavily implied by the root crafters that the reason that the Shadowborn are able to get into the world and that they exist to begin with is because of how the Legendborn practice their magic. Like they're the heroes who stand up to fight the Shadowborn, but they also heavily imply that they're also the reason the Shadowborn are there. So I'm hoping, obviously we're going to learn more about that in the next book.
The Merlins are literally made with a Shadowborn. They're half and half. They're half human, half Shadowborn. Yeah. And the root practicer or root crafters are like, ooh, demon child, no.
Yeah. So as far as which one's better, I think that the root crafters at the end of the day are better, even though the Legendborns are more powerful. The root crafters in all aspects, like their power isn't as strong, but they get to live a full life. They're also more like, their magic is more courteous, I guess, because they're asking their ancestors to borrow their power. They're not just taking it. And so I guess I don't know which one's better. The root crafter is my preference. If I was going to be a practicing person in this world, I would prefer to be a root crafter.
I mean, at this point, you would have been dead anyway, so.
That's true. If I was a Legendborn, I'd be dead already.
No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, that's just my thought on that.
So you know how? Well, I was going to say, you know how you compared, although I think this comparison's wrong, but you're entitled to your opinions, as far as Legendborn being blood magic. So if we're going to do a comparison of that, which I do not agree with, I don't think it's blood magic, but regardless, root crafters to me would be like soil and dirt. That's what I pictured it more like. It's nature. Yeah, it's like nature based. Earth magic, yes. That's what I pictured it as more. What is that word I'm looking for? It's medicine based. Holistic.
Yes.
It's holistic. Yep. So that's what I picture root crafters, like you do this offering for your family. It's more in nature and some might say more natural than to Legendborn and stuff. But regardless, it's really cool.
It is. I looked up blood magic, and there's apparently 2 different primary schools of thought, so it makes both of us correct.
This is fake. Like, it's not real. Like, where are you getting your sources? Like, anybody can just, like, Wikipedia this because it ain't real, bro.
In the realm of fantasy, there's generally 2 thoughts. It's the ones that you describe where they literally need a few drops of blood to use the magic, whether theirs or someone else's, and then there's their school of thought where it's that they use their life force. Their life force is the power behind their magic. And this would fall into the latter. But
we're debating blood magic and it's not even real.
Anyway, next question. What plot twist took you the most by surprise? And you know what? If you're still here, you're about to have a big thing spoiled what I'm about to say. So that Bree is the scion of Lancelot. Or sorry, the scion of Arthur. No.
You don't even spoil it correctly.
That was the biggest thing for me. Like when we find out that, you know, not only is Bree a root crafter because her mom was and she has that in her blood, she's also a Legendborn because it turns out that it's not Nick who's the scion of Arthur, it's actually Bree, and Nick is the scion of Lancelot because of some twisted family tree stuff that happened and they explain in the book. But that was definitely like there are some things in this book that like I predicted because some of the things were more predictable. This was just like oh my God, what? And I don't think Barbara predicted this either. I might be wrong because she
I
predicts
did.
everything.
No, I did because I even told you. We had a conversation about this. There was something else that I did not predict, but that one I did.
So that was the biggest plot twist that totally took me by
and there
surprise.
are a lot. Let's say there are a lot of plot twists, and let me tell you, they're all yummy and wonderful and amazing. But this one, I feel like it was a bit hinted at if you paid attention to the little nugs that she was dropping, personally.
Yeah. Actually, I think if I was going to pick two, it would be both times in the book when Bree finds out that she's magic. Like when she finds out about the root crafting, that was also a really cool plot twist. Not just because Bree has that, but because we learned about this whole new system, and that was so cool. And then the second one is obviously what I just talked about, which is when she found out. Not only that, but she's like, this badass bitch who's the scion of freaking King Arthur. So
I know the best part is like when he kind of takes over, and like obviously it's a dude, and she's like, it's kind of creepy when he just takes over and like uses my body as his like voice box. I thought that was kind of an interesting scene. I'm curious to know how that's going to go in the second book, since we only got a brief hint of it in
the very, very end. Yeah.
So for me, and there, like I said, there are a lot of plot twists. For me, it was the fact that Bree's mom, Faye, was like two things, right? One, good friends with Sel's mom. And two, she died naturally in the sense that no one murdered her. That, to me, was a bigger plot twist because I literally did think that... Actually, I thought Nick's dad maybe had something to do with the mom's death. And I didn't know how. And I was like running through a bunch of like scenarios, like maybe she saw something she shouldn't have seen, which she did, actually. But like other stuff, I just figured it wasn't of natural causes. She died due to bloodcraft, is what they call it, that her ancestor used to be able to escape the crappy situation that she was in. And so, AKA, that's the price that Bree's family pays for the power. And they just die really young. Like her grandma died that way, obviously Bree's mom. And it's hinted that Bree will, unless I have a feeling they're going to break like the whole cycle of this at the end. I think that's what's going to happen. But I thought that was a bigger twist because I figured Bree was the scion for Arthur because, like I said, she kind of drops like little hints here and there. But as far as like her mom dying naturally because of what happened, that I did not tie that in.
Yeah, I definitely didn't expect that.
Yeah, that was really very good. And then the fact that like Bree's mom and Sel's mom were friends. That was, I thought, very interesting. I'm curious to know, like, learn more about their relationship too.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that, like other stuff we talked about, that is something we learn more about in the next book. Okay, so how did you initially take Bree and Nick's flirtatious relationship, and then what about Bree and Sel's relationship? Did your initial wow, easy for me to say, did your initial evaluation change towards the end of the book?
So, love triangle trope is a trope for a reason. I didn't dislike it, but I was also wondering about it because Bree kept saying she felt this like pull kindredness towards Nick, and I just kind of filed that away towards the back because I feel like that's not how you talk about liking someone, and that's another one of those. I feel like it's a hint that is dropped because Lancelot and Arthur are like BFFs or whatever. I mean, there's that whole I cheated on you with your girlfriend, but I don't think that's part of, maybe I don't think this will be part of this lore, but that's some of the lore between, Arthur and Lancelot. But so I just thought that was kind of weird wording for her to say. And then as a reader, at the end, we are led to believe the attraction between them might have been due to her being Arthur's scion and him Lancelot's, because once again, friendship. So, honestly, I'm not like team anyone in particular yet because I feel like it's still too new. I don't, I know some people feel strongly versus one or another. We're gonna go though. We're gonna do teams here. Okay, we're gonna ship them. I don't feel strongly one versus the other. I do like Sel and Bree's relationship as well, but like I don't know if I feel strongly one versus the other like sometimes I have in the past. As far as did my initial evaluation change? No, not really. Like I've learned to stop shipping triangles just because you're going to get disappointed if the one you're shipping doesn't get picked or isn't the canon ship, as we call it. So I just don't want to be disappointed. Plus,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, just if you think two people fit together, maybe that's, the author wanted to do that and then like swing and a miss and it's going to be this. So I don't, like I said, as of right now, maybe I'll feel differently in the second book since I have a feeling we're going to get more of the Bree and Cell relationship. That maybe I will change my mind once I see them more of a lovey-dovey instead of like he hates her, doesn't trust her, and she's just trying to live with him. So
I'm just going to open up and say that this question was explicitly put in here for Barbara. I hate love triangles. Hate them.
why?
Hate the trope.
Why was this put? You didn't have to, like, I don't care about talking about the relationship because it's not even a huge part of the book, but okay. I feel like you just wanted to say, I hate this, and that's why you put the question in. Don't even lie. Like, let's not pretend.
No, it's
then
not.
why put it in? Because I didn't feel strongly one way or another, so it's not like you got a great answer out of it.
But I mean, the relationship part of it is part of the book. I initially, it was fine. I liked Nick and Bree's relationship at first. I thought it did kind of somewhat grow organically. It was a little bit strange at the end, like Barbara mentioned, to find out that relationship might have seemed so organic because of Arthur and Lancelot's close friendship.
So you think about it, they don't really fit together in the natural sense.
No,
like she has more in common
really
with Cell than she does with Nick.
Does. But they did have like a lot of chemistry in the book.
Yeah.
Her and Nick did, and it'll be very interesting
because it's her and Arthur and Lancey.
Right. It'll be very interesting if that's how it ends up twisting. As far as her and Cell's relationship, what's funny is that if they, I rolled my eyes when that happened, but I think if it had been her and Cell all along, like I said, I think the love triangle thing is stupid, but I understand it's
That's just because you've never been in one, Michael. No, it's because you've never been in one, so you're just jealous that Bree gets two men going after her, and you had zero.
I just
zero hot men that went after
zero
you.
hot men for me.
Yeah, you're just jelly. That's okay.
But anyway, I really liked Bree and Cell's relationship as well. I think Cell's actually, if there was a question you're asking about my favorite character, like I think Cell was my favorite character in the book, and so it was interesting to see them get together and how that grows and how it's probably going to grow more in future books. No, my evaluation didn't change towards the end about it. But anyway,
you just rolled your eyes because you don't.
I just rolled my eyes.
You just don't like romance in your stories at all, which is funny because like you're the quite. It's like in real world, Michael's like, love, 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 and then I'm like, eh. And then in books, I'm like, yay, love, and he's like, bleh, gross. It's like, interesting.
I don't dislike romance. I don't like the tropey stuff. And I didn't dislike the Bree and Nick relationship until it became a love triangle at the final third of the book. But
I was actually surprised because when we first met Cell, I thought Bree and Cell were going to have a thing, and it does happen, but it's much later. I thought it was going to be her and Cell, and then like Nick just pops in. I was like, what the hell is this?
Yep. So anywho, so Bree is clearly driven by revenge. It's the reason that she even joined the Order. How did the reveal about her mother's and Cell's true history past affect her future? Like Barbara said earlier, like that was one of the biggest plot twists in the book, even though it was such a mundane thing. Like there's this whole, like the book is predicated on this mystery of what happened, who killed her mom, and why was the Order involved. And to find out it was just an accident. It just happened. It was both like chef's kiss and like a letdown at the same time, because you wanted there to be some mystery because that's what the book had built it up to be. But then the way that the author wrote it to just be a thing, it just happened. It was an accident. It was really good. It reminded me kind of how in like the second Star Wars and The Last Jedi, when everybody's like, oh, who's Rey? Who's her family? And then you find out that she's just this normal girl. Same kind of a deal. But I thought they did a good job.
But she wasn't a normal girl. She was a Palpatine.
Well, yeah, because we're not going to talk about that one, though. We're just going to talk about the second one. So anyway, the reveal of that, I think, obviously affects her future. I think that once she figures that out, I think she starts looking at the Order in a different light, because even though some of these people are her friends, when we have like her internal monologues, you can tell that she still kind of sees the Order as like the villains in her story, because she thinks they're responsible for her mom's death. And once she figures out that they're not, I think she starts to kind of see all of that in a different way. And so that obviously is going to really impact the future of these books.
I don't know about her saying that they're not the villains. I want to go that far. But...
Well, not the villains of her story. Maybe still villains, but not like there's no, like, once the mom thing is gone, there's no like big vendetta against the Order itself.
Sure.
But anyway, go ahead.
So as far as like the revenge driving her, it's literally the driving force for her to even get involved in all of this. Once she learned what actually happened to her mom and that her mom died of natural causes, as far as like what happened because of, you know, the blood magic or whatever you want to call it, and then the car wreck that she was in, I think it just derails her a bit for sure, especially because like she's like this balloon, right? This pressure of I have to find who killed my mom. Like that was her driving force to keep the sadness, to keep all those emotions that she felt losing her mom so young at bay. And if that balloon freaking popped for her, it popped because she's like, now what do I have left? The revenge was literally what was keeping her going at this really high, brisk functioning level, I would say. When you're pushing those emotions down, you're depressed and all that, but you don't want to deal with it. So I think she just gets lost in a little because of that. Now she doesn't have that driving force. She, you know, like, what is she going to do? What does she have left? So I think she's going to have to find something else to push herself. And I think dismantling the order, because I don't think she agrees with it, especially the higher ups of how they've dealt with things, especially like how they dealt with her mom seeing what happened, how they're dealing with the Shadowborns, how they dealt with Cell's mom, because they pretty much lied about everything about Cell's mom and created this monster to fit their narrative, and she never did any of these awful things they claimed that she did, and then lied to Cell about it and made him think that he was turning into his mom, and this poor lady didn't even do half this crap, and this poor kid didn't even, you know, it's just this whole thing, all because of Nick's evil father. So I think that's going to be her new driving force. Instead of revenge, it's going to be like take down the patriarchy, and the patriarchy in this sense is the order and how they've done things. And then obviously, like, saving Nick is, you know, probs high up there as well, just because you can steal your own child. That's still kidnapping. Especially because isn't he 17 or 18? Technically, he's an adult, so adult napping.
He would be an adult because he's a traditional college student, so he would be at least 18.
I think he's 17.
Is he? I thought he was 18 or 19.
So they're like, so she's 16 for sure. And I think they're like 17 or 18. I think some of them are. I don't think they're too much older than that. But anyways, I'm sure you can figure it out on like Legendborn wiki somewhere.
I just did. He's 17.
Oh, there we go. Yep. So still child napping. So yeah, I think she's going to focus her attention now on that. And then I do think the second book is going to be her dealing with the fact of what actually happened to her mom, and that revenge subplot for her is kind of like deflated her, and now she has to find, you know, something else to put all that anger in.
Yep, that's a good way to describe it. Let's see. Death is an integral theme discussed in the book. What are your thoughts on this statement from Bree? Death separates us from one another, and yet it holds us close. As deeply as we hate it, it loves us more.
Some great quotes in this book. So I think it's just the age-old comparison of life and death being so ingrained in one another, like so intertwined with one another. Most people have experienced some type of loss, and in Bree and Cell's case, it's the loss of their mothers, and that's what brings them closer together. So I think it's that duology, life and death. You can't have one without the other sense.
No, yeah, I think that's a perfect explanation. It's essentially what she's saying, that as much as death separates us, it also brings us back together, whether it's like Cell and Bree getting together, they're bonding through their grief, their shared grief, or whether it's, you know, like someone in your family passing away and the whole family coming back together, whereas maybe they otherwise wouldn't have, but they did for that. And it's a really good quote. And there were a lot of pretty good philosophical quotes from Bree through the book, but this was definitely a good one. Next, Scions pay a heavy price for their service. Because the binding occurred centuries ago, they have no choice but to heed the call, whether they want to or not. Do you think it's fair to be beholden to something your ancestors decided centuries before you were born? Whew, man. So I mean, it's easy to say no, it's not fair. But I mean, life's not fair, right? We're all born into different circumstances in our lives. And while most of the circumstances in our normal lives aren't the same as the circumstances that these people are born into, that they're forced to do this. But I think that there's definitely some comparisons that you could draw to being, born into something. And so it's definitely, it's tough. They have to heed the call. They have no choice. Heeding the call means they're dying early. It also could mean them dying an unnatural death because they get killed on the battlefield fighting these Shadowborn and whatever is worse. I can understand why they wouldn't. The younger generation being born into it would think that it's not fair. But on the other hand, their ancestors made a deal. That was the pact. That's what it was. And like all of us are born into different circumstances, this is the circumstance that they were born into.
Yeah. So I think, if you're actually looking at it, no gray in the middle, black or white. Yeah, it's not fair. Definitely not. But that is their life, unfortunately. And I think it's just a very complicated predicament to be in because you don't have a choice. And I also wonder, this is just me going off here when I was reading this and thinking about this, is like having children, knowing exactly what would happen to them or might happen to them. Like, is it worth it to be knowing that you're putting that burden on them? If you didn't feel great about having that burden put on you, like, how does that affect you in having children? Granted,
really
like someone... Thought. Yeah, that's the thought I had, especially since, like, if you don't have kids and it's passed down to maybe if you have a brother or sisters, it's their children. Do you want to put that on your nieces and nephew? Like, it turns into this whole freaking thing that spirals, right? And I just thought of that because look at how Nick handled this. He wanted no part of this. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want the responsibility. He just wanted to be a normal kid. And you see how that affected him, like, very much so. So it's just interesting. Very interesting. Curious to see how it's going to go. That's why I think that's going to be dismantled at the end of the series. I think this whole passing it down, I don't think it's going to happen.
You think they're going to figure out a way to break the pact?
I think they're going to figure out either completely, so then no one's going to have those powers, or maybe it's going to be more of a, if you want to, then you can type thing. But we'll see.
That's a very interesting thought. And I think that if we look at it through like our perspective, it's easy to think about, like, would children be worth it to put them through this and have to deal with that? But I think, at least in the book, the kids that are in it and the parents that we meet as well, they definitely see it as a big honor. Like, they don't see it as a burden. They see it as it's their responsibility, and it's an honor to be selected to be a part of that. And if that's your viewpoint, I think it would be easier to think about bringing children into the world, because then you'd be bestowing your legacy, your family's legacy.
Feels that way. It's easy it's easy for Nick's dad because he didn't have to do jack crap. It's harder for like the 12th one, Williams family, because they're always being called. So regardless of what happens, their family is going to be the one that's mostly affected. Like I said, it's easy to think that way when you're on top and don't have to put as much of your life and all this stuff that affects you on the line.
Yeah, that's very true. Just another example of, class-based stuff, right? All right, let's see. Now this should be good. What was the biggest question that you would like answered in the next books?
All the biggest questions. There's just too many. All the questions. I want all the questions answered. So, like, who really is behind the Shadowborn? Right. Who's controlling them? Who is the big bad? Because I don't think we've met them yet, as far as like that. Because in this book, we're led to believe that the Order are the good guys, and group that dropped off from the Merlins and stuff are the bad guys, and they're the ones controlling the Shadowborn, but it doesn't sound like that way anymore. So there's that. So, like, they're called the Morganes. So are the Morganes truly evil, or did the Order lie about that as well? Because we find out at the end of the book there's a lot of stuff the Order is lying about. And will Nick side with his father and turn bad? Because, like, maybe this love triangle ain't gonna be no more love triangle, and she's gonna end up with Cell because Nick's gonna believe in his dad. Or is he gonna, like, say, F you, father, everything you've done with the Order and all this stuff is awful, I don't believe you. Like, all the questions. I cannot wait for the second book to come out. It has been 2 years too long of a waiting period. Too long. And it's not even out yet. I have to wait more months.
It's this year, though, right? Does it come out like in November?
Thank God, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I've got a lot of similar questions. a lot of similar questions to Barbara. I also think we haven't met the big bad. I mean, just kidding. Nick's dad is the big bad. No, he's definitely not. I also want to know more about the Morganes, just because I don't think that they're this evil society of like defectors, effectively. Morgane was definitely not an evil force in the original Arthur story. She was Arthur's protector, which is kind of an odd thing to
She
call the
actually
group of.
is. She actually is.
She is
Do you
evil?
know any? So if you know anything about it, it is she was Arthur's friend, and then she turns evil and actually turns against him. She actually is evil. She wasn't and turned evil. So that's why when we met Victoria and her last name is Morgan, I was like, oh, she's the evil one, because it was like, it's Morgan, it's gonna be Morgana. That's Morgane, the name. And I was like, that's going to be her. It's going to be the evil one. Oh, I figured it out. And then they're like, there's this whole group that's called the Morganes, and they're the evil ones. I was like, well, rats. But yes, actually, in the story, she was friendly to him and then turned evil.
She starts out as friendly and his protector, but doesn't she?
I know I'm right.
I know you are. But it's not like she's pretending, though. Like, she turns evil because she gets betrayed.
Are you like, did you just Google that? Because I know you did. Let's not lie that you didn't.
She's betrayed by. I did. I looked it up.
Yes.
She gets betrayed in the story by Merlin.
Right. Exactly. No, but I mean that doesn't mean you can go and murder people.
No.
Like,
it'll just be interesting. Merlin, like you said,
Merlin shouldn't have done that either. I'm not disregarding what he did. Like he was that was not cool. And this is just based off of one story. There's like multiple Arthurian legends and stuff. This is just like one sect of it, of where this is the case for it.
In the future books, I would love some chapters that are flashbacks to when the original Knights of the Round Table made this pact. Because this is obviously kind of a unique retelling of this story, and it would be really cool to see a flashback of the original people. But yeah, definitely want to know more about Morgane. Definitely want to know more about the Root Crafters, because I feel like
it's not a person.
Morganes,
once again.
Sorry. I want to know more about the Root Crafters, because we only get a little bit about them. I feel like in the grand scheme of things, there's going to be a lot more. Like Barbara, I also want to know, is Nick going to break bad and join Dad, or is he going to, be a good guy like I'm hoping he will be? It's all lots of questions. Can't wait for November. I assume that this is one that we're going to get right away, and I'm assuming that we'll probably review it. Yes. We'll be talking to you about it here in a few months. So, there's lots of questions, as there are in anything like this, but I'm very excited to figure out the answers. And our final question: the Southern setting is critical to the narrative's progression. How does the setting enhance the story? Do you think this story could be as effective if transferred to another university or state? It's a good question, because the backdrop of it is definitely, it's important.
Did you write this question? I love it. It's a great question. Let me just pat myself on the back here.
It's good to pat yourself on the back sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, the setting is very important. The racist undertones that we see and are talked about wouldn't be present if this book took place in like Massachusetts or something, at least not as prevalent as it would have been in the South. I think that you could argue for it being in a different Deep South university, and you could probably tell a very similar story. The specifics, and you could just tell the author did a ton of research about not only the University of North Carolina, but that area. And it was,
she's from there, isn't she?
Is she? I'm not sure. Actually.
I think so.
But
anyway, just because you're from somewhere doesn't mean you know everything about it. But
very true. So yeah, I think that it would be a story that could be told at other Southern universities, but otherwise, no. The South, obviously, like I said, plays a huge part in it, because especially for Bree's history and her ancestors, like all of that would have been very different if her ancestors had been from the North. It would just be it'd be a very different story. And so the Southern setting, while it's not, like, I feel like in some books, the setting is almost like another character in the book. And that's not really the case here. But any other backdrop wouldn't have been as effective for this story as being set in the American South.
Yeah, I don't have much to add there. Like, it's pretty much what you said. It gives her family, the Root Crafters, the background that they had, and they were from the North. There were slaves, but it wasn't like to this extent. And obviously then they decided to change their mind, and then we had the whole Civil War or whatever to do that. So I think it would definitely be different. Yeah, I mean, like you said, like if it was maybe a different southern state, God knows we have a lot of racist southern states still, it could have been similar. But I think the reason why was because I think this has a personal place in the... I do think she is from there. I think that's maybe why she chose it. But it fits with the story, especially the whole... like
she's not from there. She went to college there.
Ah, there you go. So there you go.
As far as individual scores, Barbara, you want to get us started? What was your score for Legendborn?
I gave this a 9. I gobbled it up. I loved this book.
An unheard of 9 from Barbara.
I know. It's very rare I give 9s. You still have yet to give a 10, but I just loved everything about this book. I loved how she turned, like, you know, I don't know. I shouldn't say every kid is obsessed with Arthurian legend. I had phases that I went through, and this was one of them that I really enjoyed. So it's kind of nice to see how she did this take on it. And I just really liked it. There was nothing I disliked about the book, really. And I'm just super excited for the second one, where it's going to go. And I think this is an amazing debut book, honestly. It's just great. Everything I love in a book. So
for context, Barbara has only given one other book on this whole podcast a 9.
Is that?
Yep.
Are you sure? I thought I gave a few more 9s.
Nope. Gideon the Ninth is the only book you've given a 9 until Legendborn.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. So there you go. So for me, I gave the book an 8. I also loved the book. I also read it very quickly because I couldn't, read/listened. I kind of go doing a hybrid model lately, but I loved it. It was a really good story. I'm excited to read more of it. I can't wait to see where these characters go and how the world opens up and learning more about the world. And it's just, it was an 8. As we said earlier, our group score for this one was an 8.5 out of 10. We both recommended it. So if you are still listening and you haven't read it and we haven't ruined it for you, feel free to go out and grab that book and read it.
Like, what are you doing now? Like, you should have been reading this book.
You shouldn't be here. You should have already read the book. But anyway,
great book.
Make sure you're following Badass Literature for free in your favorite podcast app. Give us a rating if you can, and leave us a review if they allow you to. It's really important. It helps our podcast get seen by more people and heard by more people, which would be awesome. So if you like our show, please give us a rating and leave us a review. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. In both places, our handle is @BadassLitPod.
So if you have any feedback about today's episode, just contact us by writing to badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. Hey, after 20 episodes, I got it, yo! Don't expect that of greatness next time. Anyways, you can also send us a DM or leave a comment on our handles on Instagram or Facebook, like Michael said.
And with that, thank you so much for listening today. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara, and go pick up Legendborn because it's amazing. And if you haven't, we're no longer friends.
Bye.
Bye.